brings me to this, and I think that's kind of important, is what's the problem that you know that you can solve, right? And you may have lots of problems, but I think it helps to kind of settle in on a few. And page 3 in your workbook is a good place to take some notes on this too. And it's going to ask you to really think specifically about some things. And I want you to think specifically about your area of expertise, right? If you're a therapist, maybe it's helping others heal from trauma, or guiding anxious professionals, right? Or coaching high performers. Same skills, different scenario, right? If you're in business, maybe it's helping entrepreneurs build confidence. Maybe you're creative and it's helping other people like create their products, right? Maybe you don't want to do all that, but you're great with like Canva, you're great with the computer, like, girl, go do that thing. Right? Maybe you love pets and want to help folks like train their dogs to be mindful. And there's actually someone in my circle doing that. She teaches emotional regulation to pet owners so they can train their dogs. Right? And she's not a therapist, right? So, it's about being creative. And I think life has taken us away from that space and we've sort of stopped dreaming of possibilities. But there's so much for you. Okay. So ask yourself, what is the solution that I'm called to create? And what could that look like? Right. So your notebook gives you some space to do that. I believe that was page 3. So that's the level 2 now. What's that key problem that you're solving? And what solutions have you been called to create? What do you kind of feel called to do? Or what do you like naturally do so well, right? That people call on you often for, that's like, oh, okay. So I want to expand on, this was Trish, and Trish, some of the things you said. So Trish, you shared some things about healing individuals dealing with intergenerational trauma and helping individuals seeking personal and professional growth and overall well-being. So I'm going to take that one, right? And what I'm going to say is, like, especially in the professional mindset, we love professional language, but we've got to start to think about what is the everyday person thinking and experiencing, and then convert that into, that's what I'm going to work on with this person, right? And that's the thing that I'm going to do. So, so some ideas for you. So if we're talking about intergenerational trauma, like what does that actually look like for people and their families? And then you could start to design some workshops around that, right? And I mean, whether or not they say healing trauma, you'll have to figure out, but maybe it's helping them to kind of break out of harmful cycles. They may identify more with cycles than they may like intergenerational trauma. Like, we've studied a lot, we know a lot, and sometimes we speak from there, but that's not really the language of our clients. It's not really the language of like organizations and things like that. Like, there may be organizations that support, let's say, families and children and the things that they do, and they may not use intergenerational trauma, but they may deal with like the conflict from one generation to the next. So we've got to figure out how to like water it down so people can ingest it, right? But that's something that you can think about creating, like a series around that. Maybe it includes things like group discussions. Maybe it includes things like guided journaling. Depends how deep you wanted to go with it. If you wanted to do like some therapeutic exercises like therapy light, if it's not necessarily part of therapy, but it's part of just a general like educational series, right? We can do some sort of like fun things too, where maybe we do like genograms and we do that together and we map that out and we look for themes and we talk about that. And we talk about some of the things that may have been passed down that we define as trauma, and we do that too. And then, of course, it ends with some, helpful things, whether that's mindfulness, what professionally we would say is trauma-informed practices, but what would that mean for them, right? Like how to speak better to each other, how to like repair relationships, how to communicate, things like that. If you are looking at coaching around this, we would have to think about, okay, looking at those that are working on personal growth and professional success, what are the things that would show up to disrupt their professional growth, right? Or what are the things that would be hard? So we know for folks who've experienced trauma, it's hard for them sometimes to just like think about themselves or to prioritize themselves. And that may show up in professional spaces. I'm not going to come up to my law firm, for example, and say, hey, I want to do a workshop on intergenerational trauma, but I might say, I want to do a workshop for your professionals on how to set goals, how to tackle things like limiting beliefs. And I just want to do it from a more like an emotional health and wellness space, right? And just like professionally, we would focus on strengths, it would still focus on what are their strengths, right? And helping them come up with a plan to build out on that, right? If I wanted to, I can offer retreats around that, right? Same sort of focus on the like practical skills that will help us if we had experienced something traumatic. So we don't even have to get into that, but breath work, meditation, reflective exercises, what are the things that you enjoy doing that I can bring into that, right? The retreat can include things like workshops on stress management, boundary setting, emotional resilience, things like that. And sometimes when we think about retreats, when you think about like the travel retreats and whatnot, but there's also professional organizations that do retreats. I had one reach out to me, but our relationship fell out because they just the budget couldn't work out. So, but they were hosting a retreat for their staff and their like upper management, and it was like a day retreat, and they had some other things in there, but they wanted like an emotional wellness piece. So we talked about what that could look like, right? And I just knew how to fit it into what they needed. So there are folks that do those sorts of retreats too, that maybe you can tailor it where you can reach out to them and offer that as a service for them, right? So just a couple strategies and some different ways to kind of look at it. Let me know if that is if that's helpful. Krishana, you had your hand up. Is there a question?
I want to open a youth center where I can create a safe space for BIPOC people where they can socialize, grow, um, get something to eat, you know, create little programs where like if they need to look for a job or just need a computer, just need like a homework club, like a place where they can grow in different uh areas and where somewhere they can go where they can be around people their age.
Listen,
Um,
beautiful. I think that you have a big vision, right? And I would just start to think about, okay, how can I start playing with that vision? So whether that is I start piloting maybe smaller programs, and maybe I work with spaces that already exist, like libraries, churches, recreation centers, or I do some research on who is in the community doing things that I already do, and can I reach out and have conversations with them, right? So I recently connected someone to like Yes Girls Create, and they have their own nonprofit, and they're kind of doing that, right? So it's like it's somebody who's already doing it. Can there be a conversation to kind of give you some ideas too? So that's how you can kind of approach that and kind of get going. But it's amazing, right? There might be some challenges in like creating a larger scale program, but maybe you work in partnership with other people too, whether it's partnership to kind of like secure funding and things like that, or kind of like work in their space to do what you're thinking about. I'm going to just encourage you to find someone who's doing it wherever you are, and just reach out to them and let them know this is what you're thinking, right? And whether or not you need skills to do all of this, maybe not, because if you've already have skills like leadership, planning, things like that, you may be able to rely on that. And the parts that you don't have, you can get people to work with you who have those skills too, right? As for sharing it, hopefully from some of the conversations, you got some more ideas of how to just expand your skill sets.